In this video, I'm going to give you everything you need to know to get up and running with the Vue CLI 3. Let's go! What's up everyone, your favorite teacher Dan Vega back with another tutorial. I love to learn, and most importantly I love to learn and share my experiences with all of you. On this channel you're going to learn how to code through a series of tips, tricks, tutorials, discussions, and sometimes even some product reviews. So if that type of content is interesting to you, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and don't miss another video from me. In this tutorial we're going to be talking about the Vue CLI 3. If you're new to the Vue ecosystem and want to get up and running with Vue, the fastest way to do that is by using the Vue CLI. What is the Vue CLI? It's a command line interface for creating Vue applications, but it actually does a lot more, and we'll take a look at that today. So I know working with command line applications can be a little bit intimidating for some. So lucky for us, the Vue team has created a graphical user interface that sits on top of that. And we're also going to look at that today. So we'll learn how to install it. We'll look at all the commands that it can do, and then we'll look at the UI as well. So without further ado, let's jump on in and learn something new today. All right, so here we are on the VueJS.org website. So from here, you can get to kind of all the different projects in the Vue ecosystem. Obviously, you can go to Google and do a quick search for the Vue CLI and go directly there. But I like to kind of come here, I can get to everything I need to. So if you go under ecosystem and go to tooling, you see the Vue CLI. That's going to open up on a new page. And this is the main documentation site for the Vue CLI. So there is some information about it you can read through. There's a getting started. We're going to actually go through this, so we don't need to look at that right now. But then this get started button will really take you in and give you an overview of what the Vue CLI is, what it does, how to use it, that kind of stuff. So after you're done with this video, if you want to kind of jump around here, take a look at this stuff, that'd be good to get going. So we saw back on the homepage there was kind of a getting started, a quick start, if you will. And that quick start had some commands, npm install or yarn add. And so I just want to take a quick second and talk about those in case you're not familiar with them. So whenever you see something like npm install, that stands for the Node Package Manager. And that is something that comes bundled with Node. And so I'm not going to go on a tangent on what this is because this video is about the Vue CLI, but if you want to learn more about what Node is, please let me know in the comments below and maybe I can do a video on that. But if you want the kind of short and skinny of what you need to do, you need to download Node, which will give you the Node Package Manager. And so I always recommend that you go ahead and get whatever the LTS version is. So that stands for long-term support. So go ahead and get that version, download that, then you'll have NPM and you'll be ready to go. So with that, let's go ahead and jump over to the command line and we'll take a look at installing the Vue CLI. All right, so here I am. I'm on a Mac. Obviously, I'm running iTerm 2 here, but whatever terminal you're running, that is going to work just fine. If you're on Windows, this is not a Mac-only thing. Feel free to use whatever command line you like to use. So now that we just talked about Node and NPM, I want to make sure that Node's installed and NPM is available. So a way I can do that real quick is just type node-v. And if you remember from their website, that long-term support version, the latest one was 10.15.0. So we are good there. You can also run npm-v because again, I said Node Package Manager is something that comes with Node. And so it is separate and it will have a different version, and that's okay. That 6.7.0 is just fine, or whatever, the latest is at the time. So that's a quick way to check to see what's going on as far as what versions of those are. With those in place, we have everything we need to go ahead and install the Vue CLI. So I'm going to hop back over to here and I'm going to look at installation. And again, there's the quick there's some information here about, hey, the Vue CLI requires Node.js 8.9 or above, which we're fine with. And it says to install a new package, use one of the following commands. So we're going to run npm install -g Vue CLI. So I would just copy that in here. I would come in, I would paste it, and I would hit enter. Now I'm actually already installed, so it's going to be installed for me. But if yours isn't, run that command. It just takes a little bit and it will install. So once that's done, we can come back and we can check to see what version of the Vue CLI we are running by using the command vue. So there is, the vue command is what actually runs the CLI. There are a bunch of different commands that run with it, one of which is -v, which will tell us what version we're currently running. And that's currently the version, the latest release, which is 3.11. If you're ever curious about that, you can go over to GitHub and you can check out the releases. At the time of this recording, they're already working on version 4. So you can see there's a release candidate 3 that's already available. But if I were to jump down here and look at the 3.x line, I could see that 3.11 is the latest release. So we are good there. So if we just go ahead and type vue, we can actually get a look at all of the different available commands. You'll see that -- version, or the shortcut for that is that -V, and that's what gave us the version number. If we use -h, we'll get some help information. And then we have all these different commands. So these commands are really the center of the Vue CLI. This is what's going to help us do the different things that we need to do using the Vue CLI. So the first command, we're going to look at a few of them today. The first command I want to look at is just info, which gives us a little bit more info about what our system looks like. So if we type vue, and again, if I forgot, I can just hit enter and I can see the available commands. So if I type vue and then I just type info, it's going to give me some environment info about my machine. So I can see what my system is, binaries. I can see that I have node, npm, and yarn installed. So instead of having to type node-v, npm-v to kind of see what's installed, that will give me everything. And then it shows that what my browsers are and what my global packages are. So that's a really good way to kind of get an overview of what your environment looks like. So the next command I'm going to show you is the serve command. And this is actually a command that I don't see a lot of people talking about, but it's actually very useful. And so if we go ahead and type in vue again, we'll get a list of commands. And if we look at the serve command, it says serves a .js or .vue file in development mode with 0 configuration. And this is very important because when you're just getting started with Vue and you just want to kind of play around, you might not always want a full project that has all these different configurations and wizards and like steps to go through. Like, hey, I just want to write a Vue template. I want to see how it is, see if I like it. I want to serve it up and actually see how it works. So this is a great, for me, I think a very awesome like first step. Let's write just a Vue component, serve it in a browser in a development mode with 0 configuration. So let's take a look at how we can do that. I'm going to pop over to Visual Studio Code, and I have a folder here called the Vue CLI, and I'm just going to create a new file, and we're going to call this hello world.vue. And inside of here, I'm going to create just a scaffolded template out by typing vue, and I'll get our basic stuff here. And I'm going to have h1, and then I'm going to have a message here. And so we're going to create that message, and we're going to do so by going ahead and creating a data element that returns some data. And we're going to say that message is equal to hello world. Okay, so now we have our element there. That looks good. I'm actually not going to do any styling, so we can get rid of that if we wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now I have this component that I want to go ahead and test out to see if it works. So if you wanted to do this by hand, there'd be a lot of configuring and kind of a pain in the butt, to be honest. Like, it'd be really hard to do. But thankfully for us, we have this command that will serve this up. So if we go back to the command line and we type in vue serve and then the name of the file. So in this case, it's hello world.vue. It's going to go ahead and start a development server. So it says project is running locally at localhost 8080. So I'm going to pop back over to the browser and go to localhost 8080, and there's our hello world. So that's really awesome. That gets us up and running. Now, just a quick caveat with that instant prototyping. So under the basics, you will need to install something else to get that to work. But if you go ahead and type that out, it'll show you exactly what you need to do. It'll say, hey, you don't have this other service installed. So if instant prototyping is something that you want to do, you may want to install this as well. Just another install command, and you are ready to go. So cool. That's instant prototyping using the Vue CLI. I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and we're going to take a look at another command here, which is the create command. All right, so the next command that we're going to look at is the create command. So if you look at that there, create says, create a new project powered by the Vue CLI service. So this is going to create for us an entire Vue project, complete with all the configuration. You'll go through a wizard and kind of predefine, like select what your project is going to look like, and it's going to build us, scaffold this project for us. And so this is a great way to get started. Again, trying to do this from building this from scratch would be a lot of time and very confusing and hard to configure. So I'm thankful for the Vue CLI that it does that for us. Now, before we get started, if you didn't know this, so each of these commands has some help with it. So if you type like vue create and you're not sure what else, like what options you can have with the create command, you can say -h, and it's going to give you a list of all the options that we can kind of pass into this particular command. So there are a few that I really like here. So there is a -b, so or --bear. This scaffolds out a project without beginner instructions. So you'll see when we scaffold this out, it creates a hello world component for us. It kind of gives us a getting started a few different files and folders. After you get very familiar with using it, I kind of start skipping that because I don't need it anymore. So I like that. There's also the default. So if you want to skip all the prompts and use the default preset, that comes in very handy. Or you can actually just use a specific presets, and we'll talk more about presets as we get into this. So again, I'm in this Vue CLI folder, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type vue create, and now I want to type the name of the project. So for me, I want to type in hello world, and what this is going to do is actually create a directory inside of this directory with the name of hello-worlds. You don't need to create your directory. The Vue CLI is going to do that for you. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to give me some options. So again, I talked about presets. You'll see there's a lot of different options when configuring a application using the Vue CLI. Once you kind of get into this is the type of project that I want mine to look like, you can actually save that as a preset and just use that so you don't have to go through every one of these steps. But for this, we're going to go to manually select features. So I'm just using my arrow keys and I'm going to hit enter. So here's where we start to get the options that are given to us. So check the features you needed for your project. You see there's some helpful information there. Press space to select. That is something that I know people have run into in the past. They may arrow down and try to hit enter, but what return does is actually just take you to the next step. So make sure when you want to select a step, you go down to it and you hit the space bar or space bar to uncheck it. So these are the features in our application. So by default, Babel and linter is going to be, they're going to be selected, and there's no reason to unselect them. So just keep those selected. And then based on your project, you're going to have different options here. So is it a PWA? Do you want to have Vue router? Do you want to have Vuex for state management? Do you want to use something like Sass? Are you going to do some testing? Those are the types of options that you're going to get. But by default, I'm just going to go ahead and leave what we have here and hit return. So for every kind of plugin, these are plugins that we're using. For every plugin that we select there, we have some different options to go ahead and further configure each of those. So with the Babel and linter, we have pick a linter or formatting config. So by default, ESLint with error prevention only is selected. But you can use something like the Airbnb config, a standard config, or ESLint and prettier. So I'm going to just keep it with error prevention only. But if you're interested in kind of diving into what those different options will do for you, let me know in the comments below. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and lint on save. So every time we save, we're going ahead and we're linting. Where do you prefer placing configs for? So we have all of these different things that have their own kind of configuration files. Do you want to put them all in the package.json, which is what kind of Node creates for us, that kind of defines like what our project looks like and the different dependencies and scripts that are available? Or do you want them in their own dedicated config files? And this is the default, and I like it better. I don't like cluttering up the package.json because there's going to be a lot that goes into that. So that's I feel like there's enough in there already. I kind of like to have these dedicated config files. So here's where you can say, all right, this is what a normal project looks like for me. I want you to go ahead and save this as a preset. And if you hit yes, it'll ask you for a name, and you can give it a name. I can say, hey, my work preset, and then I can use that as kind of the default or pick that as a preset the next time that I create a project. For now, I'm going to say no. And what it's going to do is it's going to go off and take all of those options that I've selected, and it's going to create an entire application for me. And so what we're going to do as soon as this is finished is we'll open up VS Code, we'll go into it, and we'll start to look around at like all the different files and folders and how we can kind of move around that project. Where do we get started with kind of writing our own code? How can we run a project? How can we build a project? All that fun stuff. So it says it's done in 27 seconds. It's installing some additional dependencies. Again, you only kind of got to do this once when your project started, and then you're ready to go. So down here, you see generating README. It says successfully created project hello-world. Get started with the following commands. CD into hello world, and then yarn serve. So I think my default right now is yarn, but yours is probably going to say npm run serve, so you can do that as well. So let's actually do that. So let's run into that directory, and I'm going to type npm run serve, and it's going to go ahead and start a development server for me. So this is kind of similar to what we did before when we were doing our instant prototype. I'm going to type in localhost 8080, and here's our default application. So I do really like the stuff that you get is included in the default application that the Vue CLI creates, because it kind of gives you a starting point. Especially when you're new to Vue development, it's a great place to kind of look at and see how things work. So I just stopped that from the command line by using Control-C. And I'm going to hop back over to Visual Studio Code. I'm going to close that file that we were working on before. And if you see, we have a Hello World folder now. So this Hello World is the project that we just created, and I want to take a look around and see what's going on here. So node modules is basically everything all the dependencies for this project that were installed. So don't even bother looking through there. There's so many, it's a little bit overwhelming. You don't even want to worry yourself with this. So we have our public and our source folders. We'll come back to that in a second. This browser lint, this ESLint, this Babel, this post CSS, these are all config files. Remember we said to store them in their own dedicated config files. That's what this did for us. We also have a package.json, and this is important because it kind of defines our project. So you see there's some metadata about the project. There's some scripts which tell us how to actually do things in our project, like run it or build it or lint it. And then there's dependencies. So these are dependencies that the project is dependent on. And these are the dependencies that I'm dependent on running locally when I'm just developing the application. All right, so that's the package.json. What I want to look at now are these two folders here. We have public and source. So public is kind of where the main entry point of the application is. So we have our index.html. This div id equals app is kind of where our Vue app is mounted to. I just want to leave it at that. We're not going to get too in the weeds in this tutorial. If you want to learn a little bit more, we can create some more content around getting started with the Vue itself. So that's the public folder, but anything that we are working on, any code that we're writing is going to go inside of this source folder. So inside this source folder, we have an assets folder, components, we have an app.vue, and a main.js. Now, depending on what you selected, you may have more code in there. For instance, if you use something like Vue Router and you're setting up routes, that plugin will go ahead and add some additional files to this folder. If you're using something like Vuex for state management, again, you'll have additional files here. And really, unit testing, anything that we kind of add to it, it may look different. But if you followed me, we should be looking at something similar. Again, I'm not going to get into the weeds on kind of how Vue works in this. I just want to kind of get started with Vue CLI. So the main entry point of our application here is this app.vue. And if you're new to Vue, this is a single file component. You'll see it referred to as an SFC, single file component sometimes. And what this allows us to do is we have our markup, we have our JavaScript, and we have our CSS all in one file. I know working with other frameworks where you have kind of two or three different files for all of these things, can get tough kind of managing those assets or managing those files. So I really appreciate the single file components because I have everything right here in one place. So right here we have an ID of app, and we have this image, and we have this hello world tag, that's not a normal HTML element, right? That's different. And what that is that hello world component that's in this components folder right here. So if we look at that component, again, this is another single file component that's made up of markup, data, and styles. And this component has, just a bunch of stuff in it. And so in our app.vue, we are importing that. So we say import hello world. Here's the location of that component. And I want you to go ahead and use that component. And then once we do, we can use it like an element on our HTML here. And then we have some styles that kind of just style it up. So this app is what gets loaded, and then this pulls in the image and our hello world component. So what we did before is we actually ran it from the command line. I can run it right here in Visual Studio Code, opening up the terminal. Now, this is where the package.json comes back into play, because if you're not sure, if you're kind of new to Vue and you're not sure what commands you need to run, you can always come back and look at this package.json. And this is going to tell you the scripts that are available. So here we have serve, build, and lint. So if we want to go ahead and run it locally, we can use the serve command. So what we are going to do is we need to move into the directory, because I don't think I'm in there. So I'm going to cd into hello world. So I'm just going to say npm run. So again, that's node package manager. We are running a particular script. And in this case, we can look up here and see we have a serve script. So I'm going to say node package manager run serve, and it's going to start our development server. And again, just like we did from the command line, we can go back to our browser and refresh this. And here's what we're looking at again. So here is that logo. And then everything down here is the hello world component that we imported it into app. And then again, just like the command line, we can go ahead and hit Control C, and we can stop that from running. So we saw that we have a serve command. We also have a build command. So if we run npm run build, it's going to basically take everything and build a production distribution, and we can go ahead and use that. So we can deploy this to a server somewhere else. So here we go, and we look in the dist folder, and then here we have our CSS, our image, our JS, and then those two files that came from the public folder. So we have our index.html and our filecon.ico, and then this is the build of everything. And so this now we can take and put on a server somewhere, and our application would run. So that is the create command, which creates us an application, gives us a really nice starting point that we can go ahead and build out. We can run locally using the serve command. We can also build a production ready distribution using the build command. So that's create, but hey, maybe you're not comfortable using the command line or just don't like using it. So what are our options there? So let's go ahead and take a look at another command what we can run. The next command that we're going to look at is the UI command. So the UI command is to start and open the Vue CLI UI. As I mentioned previously, not everybody's comfortable working on the command line, or maybe you just enjoy a graphical user interface a little bit more than this boring old command line. So I really think it's great that Vue includes the UI. I think it really helps lower the barrier to entry into Vue, and it gives us a really nice interface to kind of create and scaffold out our new projects. So just like all the other commands, if you're not sure what options are available, you can come in here and set Vue UI-H, and there are different things that you can run. So just know that those options are there. But to get started, I'm going to go ahead and run Vue UI. So I'm in a folder. I'm not in my Hello World project. I'm in a folder that has no project yet. So when I do that, it's going to bring me right to this project manager. So we have no existing projects yet. So what I want to do is actually go ahead. I could import one if I already had like a folder with a Vue project in there, or I want to create a new one. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. So we're going to say create, and this is inside of this Vue CLI folder. So I'm going to say I'm going to create that new project here, and we're going to type in a new folder name. So hello Vue UI. So you can see exactly where it's placing it. That's one thing I really do like about the UI. Kind of gives you a much better visual representation of what's going on. When we type vue create on the command line, we're not sure, like, does this create a new folder for us, or do I have to create a folder and then go in there and do that? So what I like is you're getting a clear representation here of where that is actually getting saved off to. So then you have a package manager, so you can use the default, or I'm going to just say we're going to go ahead and use npm. Then we have some additional options. Overwrite target folder if it exists. No thanks. Scaffold project with beginner instructions. So if you wanted to turn that on, you could. We're going to leave that off for now. And then Git repository, we want to go ahead and initialize a Git repository. So that's good. Next, we're going to go into presets. So just like the vue create command, we have all these different options that we can use for our presets. But just as we did with the vue create command, I'm going to go through and manually select these. So let's click manual select and go to next. So just as we did on the command line when we hit vue create, we have all these different options to enable features in our application. What we can do is go through and actually select them now. So just like the command line, we have Babel and linter are on by default. If we wanted to turn on something like TypeScript, I can go ahead and click on this option button here. And so for every one of these, if we go ahead and specify that, that's how this app is going to be built. So I'm going down through here. This one's a little bit different. So use specific configuration files. I like to turn that on. I'm not going to add anything else at this point, so I can go ahead and click next. And just like before, once we pick our features, we're going to have some additional configuration on all of those features before we create our project. So when I pick a linter or a formatter, what I did before was just ESLint with error prevention only, and I went on lint on save. So that's all there is to do, and we're going to go ahead and create our project by clicking create. And I don't need to set a new preset. I'm going to go ahead and continue without saving a preset, and it's going to create my project for me. So again, doing the same thing, and it's actually using the CLI create command underneath the hood, I believe. If I'm wrong there, I'm sorry for misspeaking, but it is creating our project, and it's doing the same thing. It's going to end up with a pretty similar project to the one that we saw before, but one thing I really like about this is the ability to come back in and add stuff afterwards. So we'll take a look at this. I want to show an example of that. But being able to, I need to add unit testing to support to this particular project. How can I do that? So once you're done, once you have a project created, it's going to bring you to this project dashboard. And from here, you can kind of customize this dashboard. You can use the customize button to add more. So if you come in here and customize, you can add things like, hey, dependency updates. I want to monitor when I have dependency updates, or vulnerability checks, or run tasks, or a news feed. So you have some different widgets you can add to this dashboard, which is pretty cool. Then we go into plugins, and we see the different plugins that we have added here. What I really like here is that Vuex and Vue Router are two pretty standard plugins that you may want to add to your project later on. They're definitely the most popular ones because you're going to need routing at some point. You're going to need state management at some point. So you can actually just click on these buttons to add those in there, which is really cool. So we also see dependencies in here. So these are all the main dependencies of the project. And then here are the development dependencies. So we saw this when we opened up the project and looked at the actual package.json. Here's another representation of that, which is really cool. Then there's some configuration. If you wanted to see what a specific config looked like, you have this nice UI to change that kind of thing. So I just really like this. Very clean, I like the UI. It's very nice. Then you have some tasks in here. So remember when we started our Hello World application, we had to go into the command line and we had to figure out which script we were going to run. So then we ran npm run serve from the command line, and then it opened up a browser for us. Right here, we can go into serve and we can run that task. So what it's going to do is underneath the hood, run that for us. You can see it building here, and there it is. It's done. It is ready to go. So now what we can do is we can just come over here and we go to localhost 8080, and our application is now running. Pretty cool. Just again, I'm a big fan of the UI. There's a whole bunch of extra information in here. You can do a build, you can do a lint. But one other thing I want to show you, like I said, is what happens when you have a project that you've been working on and you want to add a new feature to, like the unit testing, for example. How can we add a new plugin to our Vue application? So you can do it from the command line. If you were back in the, where are we? If you're back in here, you can see that there is a Vue add option. So there's a way to install a new plugin and invoke its generator in an already created project. So that's how you can add a plugin just using the command line. But if you're here in the UI, it's actually even easier. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say, I'm going to look for unit testing and go, oh, okay, that's not there. How can we add that? So I'm going to go into add plugin and look for unit testing. And what I want to do is I want to add some unit testing. Actually, I want to add some jest. So if I go in and I see the Vue CLI plugin unit jest, that's going to give me some unit testing capabilities with jest. So I'm going to go and click on that and just click install. So what that's doing is actually, I believe, underneath the hood, running that Vue add command to add that new plugin. But I don't always remember what those plugin names are. So having this UI to come in here and look for them is really nice. And again, just something else I really appreciate about the Vue CLI, adding this UI feature on top of it. And I believe no other frameworks around have that, which is definitely cool. So once you get done, you click finish installation. And so not only does it install the plugin for you, but then it runs any commands that it needs to do, installs any additional dependencies. And then the plugin itself may have configuration like, hey, for unit testing, it's going to create a source test folder. And then inside of there, it's going to create a unit folder, and it's going to create an example.spec.js for you. So it's not only installing the plugin, but running any configuration that that plugin may have as well. So again, just really cool. And I think I'm just going to let this go. And, oh, there it is. So, oh yeah, so another thing that it does really well here is from the command line, you can do this too. When you add a new plugin, it'll spit out and give you a kind of a log of what files were added, what folders were added. And here on the UI, it does the same thing. So it says, hey, this file was changed, this file was changed, this file was changed, here this was added, etc. So just really cool, nice way to add a plugin. And so this isn't limited to projects that were created with the UI. If you create one from the command line using the create command, you can always open up a project in the UI here, which is really nice. So just, if you can't tell already, I'm a big fan of the UI, and I'm really glad that the Vue CLI has this feature. Thanks for watching, friends. Now, question of the day. What are some of your favorite CLI tools that you use on a day-to-day basis? I'm going to go ahead and ask that question below. Leave me a comment, and we'll see what you guys think. So if you found value in this, please consider supporting this channel and clicking that thumbs up, smashing that subscribe button, and as always, happy coding, friends.